The soft glow of a distant lantern casts long shadows across the page as we begin our tranquil journey into the heart of ancient history. You are settling in now, allowing the day's worries to recede like the tide, as the gentle rhythm of this narrative guides you toward a peaceful night's rest. Our destination is a land of sun-drenched sands, fertile riverbanks, and legendary rulers, the world of Cleopatra's Egypt. We are not merely reciting dates and names, but rather, we are exploring the very fabric of an era that pulsed with a vibrant energy, where colossal temples rose to meet the heavens and the river Nile, the lifeblood of the civilization, carved its winding path through history. As our story unfolds, imagine yourself drifting gently downstream, passing feluccas with their triangular sails, hearing the faint hum of a bustling market on the shore, and feeling the warmth of the Egyptian sun on your face. Before we arrive at the pivotal moment of Cleopatra's reign, we must first understand the ground upon which she stood. Her story is not a beginning, but a continuation, the final, brilliant chapter of a dynasty that was itself a product of conquest and cultural fusion. We journey back to a time long before her birth, to the arrival of Alexander the Great. In the 4th century BC, the young Macedonian king swept through the known world, and upon his conquest of Egypt, he established the city of Alexandria. This city, a beacon of learning and commerce, would become the center of the Hellenistic world and the future capital of the Ptolemaic dynasty. This dynasty, founded by Alexander's general, Ptolemy I Soter, was a unique blend of Greek and Egyptian traditions. For nearly 3 centuries, the Ptolemies ruled Egypt, adopting the titles of pharaohs while maintaining their Greek customs and language. They presided over a land that was both ancient and new, a land where grand temples to Egyptian gods were built alongside Greek gymnasiums and libraries. They walked the halls of their palaces in Greek tunics, yet they were depicted on temple walls in traditional pharaonic headdresses, a testament to their efforts to legitimize their rule in the eyes of their Egyptian subjects. The Ptolemaic era was a time of immense intellectual achievement. The Library of Alexandria, a true wonder of the ancient world, housed countless scrolls and attracted scholars from across the Mediterranean. It was a place of astronomical observation, mathematical discovery, and literary critique. This vibrant intellectual environment, however, was often overshadowed by the internal politics and family strife that plagued the Ptolemaic line. The dynasty was notorious for its sibling rivalries and power struggles, a theme that would reach its dramatic climax with our central figure. Now, we approach the moment of Cleopatra's birth in 69 BC. She was a daughter of Ptolemy the Thelath, a monarch whose reign was defined by his dependence on Roman support. The ever-expanding Roman Republic, a powerful and ambitious force, was beginning to cast a long shadow over the Mediterranean. Egypt, with its vast grain supplies and strategic location, was an irresistible prize. The Ptolemies, weakened by their own internal conflicts, found themselves navigating the treacherous currents of Roman politics, a task that demanded immense skill and foresight. Cleopatra VII, Thea Philopator, as she was formally known, inherited this complex and precarious situation. She was more than just the last pharaoh. She was a polyglot, a skilled diplomat, and a shrewd politician who understood that the survival of her kingdom depended on her ability to forge alliances with the most powerful men in Rome. Her story is one of a remarkable woman who, against the backdrop of a crumbling dynasty and the rise of a new superpower, fought fiercely to preserve her heritage and the independence of her people. As we begin to settle deeper into the narrative, we will explore not only her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, but also the rich tapestry of daily life in her kingdom. We will learn about the role of women, the architecture of Alexandria, the syncretic religion that fused Greek and Egyptian deities, and the economic engines that powered this final golden age. This is a story of a kingdom at a crossroads, where ancient traditions met a new world order, a story told in the gentle rhythm of the night, perfect for a peaceful journey into sleep. Our tranquil journey into the past begins not with Cleopatra herself, but with the world she inherited. Imagine now the fertile banks of the Nile River, a verdant ribbon of life cutting through a vast golden desert. This land, ancient even by the standards of its time, had been profoundly reshaped by a seismic event centuries before Cleopatra's birth, the arrival of Alexander the Great. In 332 BC, the young Macedonian king, sweeping through the Persian Empire, came to Egypt. The Egyptians, weary of Persian rule, welcomed him as a liberator. Alexander, in turn, paid homage to their gods, visited the oracle of Amun at Siwa, and, most importantly, founded a city that would become the heart of the Hellenistic world, Alexandria. After Alexander's sudden death in 323 BC, his vast empire was fractured among his generals. One of them, Ptolemy I Soter, claimed Egypt as his own. This act marked the beginning of a new chapter in Egyptian history, a period of nearly 300 years known as the Ptolemaic Dynasty. Ptolemy established his rule not by erasing Egyptian culture, but by adopting and blending with it. He and his successors learned to navigate a delicate balance, presenting themselves to the native Egyptian population as pharaohs, the divine successors to a long line of rulers, while maintaining their Greek identity and customs. This duality is fascinating to contemplate. On temple walls, the Ptolemaic kings were depicted in the traditional pharaonic regalia, the double crown, the royal kilt, offering sacrifices to ancient Egyptian gods like Amun and Isis. Yet, in their courts and in their private lives, they spoke Greek, funded Greek art and literature, and governed through a Greek-speaking bureaucracy. The city of Alexandria, a vibrant port on the Mediterranean, became the symbol of this cultural fusion. It was a city of monumental architecture, with the towering lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, guiding ships into its harbor. But its true jewel was the Library of Alexandria. Picture a grand complex of scrolls and scholars, a true beacon of learning that attracted the greatest minds of the era. Astronomers, mathematicians, poets, and doctors all converged here, studying and debating the accumulated knowledge of the Greek, Egyptian, and Persian worlds. It was a place where Archimedes might have visited, where Euclid taught geometry, and where the first accurate measurement of the Earth's circumference was calculated. This intellectual environment, a direct legacy of the early Ptolemies, provided the backdrop for Cleopatra's own formidable education. However, the Ptolemaic dynasty was far from a peaceful golden age. The family was notorious for its internecine strife. Brother fought sister, father against son, and political assassinations were a frequent occurrence. The later Ptolemies, with their penchant for lavish lifestyles and constant power struggles, began to weaken the kingdom from within. Their reliance on Roman support grew with each passing generation. The expanding power of the Roman Republic, a force of unprecedented ambition and military might, was now the dominant presence in the Mediterranean. Egypt, with its immense wealth from grain harvests and its strategic location, was a prize that the Romans coveted. The stage was being set for a final, dramatic act, one that would be performed by a remarkable woman who was born into this complex, politically charged, and culturally rich world. As we close our eyes for a moment, let us picture this world of competing powers, ancient traditions, and intellectual brilliance, a world now gently fading into the mists of history. We are now drifting forward in time, arriving at a moment just before the birth of our protagonist. The year is 69 BC, and the city of Alexandria is a bustling metropolis of diverse cultures and languages. Amidst the grandeur of the Ptolemaic palace, a girl is born who will one day become the most famous woman of the ancient world. Her name is Cleopatra, and she is the daughter of Ptolemy the Slelenth Aulates. Her father's reign was a turbulent one, defined by a constant struggle to maintain control of his kingdom while placating the ever more powerful Roman Republic. Auletes, meaning the flute player, was a man more comfortable with music and luxury than the brutal realities of political power. His dependence on Roman patronage, which he secured through massive bribes, made him deeply unpopular with his subjects and led to his temporary exile. It was into this world of political intrigue and dynastic instability that Cleopatra's seventh Philopator was born. Her upbringing was a unique blend of Greek and Egyptian traditions. Although she was a Ptolemy, a dynasty that had clung to its Greek heritage for centuries, Cleopatra was the first of her line to learn the Egyptian language. This was a revolutionary act, a powerful statement of her commitment to her people, and a tool that would later win her their devotion. She was also educated in the Greek tradition, studying rhetoric, mathematics, philosophy, and diplomacy. She was a polyglot, reportedly fluent in at least 9 languages, a skill that would prove invaluable in her diplomatic dealings with a variety of foreign rulers. In 51 BC, upon her father's death, a young Cleopatra ascended to the throne, ruling jointly with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. This was a common Ptolemaic practice, but it was rarely a harmonious one. Cleopatra was a woman of immense ambition and intellect, and she quickly found herself at odds with the powerful court eunuchs and advisors who sought to manipulate her brother and sideline her. The political climate was venomous, and within a few years, she was effectively ousted from power and forced to flee Alexandria, taking refuge in the Sinai Desert. This period of exile was a turning point for Cleopatra. Rather than despair, she began to raise an army of her own, consisting of loyal Arab tribes and mercenaries. She was preparing to reclaim her throne through force, a testament to her resolute and strategic mind. The stage was set for a civil war, a conflict that would tear the kingdom apart, but events in the wider Roman world would soon intervene in a most unexpected way. The Roman Republic was in the throes of its own civil war, a monumental struggle for power between two of its most famous generals, Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. After a decisive defeat at the Battle of Pharsalus, Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge with the Ptolemaic court. The young advisors of Ptolemy XIII, hoping to curry favor with the victorious Caesar, made a fateful decision. They had Pompey assassinated. This act, meant to please Caesar, would instead set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of history for Egypt and its queen. As we close our eyes, let us imagine the determined young queen in exile, preparing for war, unaware that the great forces of Rome were already moving toward her kingdom, bringing with them a man who would change her destiny. The year is now 48 BC. The vast, tumultuous world of the Roman Republic has arrived on Egypt's doorstep. After his decisive victory over his rival Pompey, Julius Caesar arrives in Alexandria, not in pursuit of conquest, but of justice, as he saw it. He was reportedly outraged by the assassination of Pompey, a fellow Roman and his son-in-law, an act committed by the very people he had expected to be his allies. His arrival in the city, with only a small force, was a bold move that plunged the Ptolemaic court into chaos. His presence here was a direct intervention in Egyptian affairs, a move that would ultimately determine the fate of the young queen. Cleopatra, still in exile, understood that this was her one chance. She knew she could not simply walk into the palace. The forces aligned against her would prevent it. She needed a way to meet Caesar privately and plead her case, and to convince him that she was the rightful ruler and the true friend of Rome. The tale of her arrival is one of the most enduring and romanticized stories of antiquity. According to the ancient sources, Cleopatra had herself smuggled into the palace, not in a grand procession, but rolled up inside a carpet. This audacious act of bravery and ingenuity brought her directly to Caesar's chambers, a move that was both a political masterstroke and a testament to her courage. The encounter that followed was momentous. Cleopatra, a young woman of only 21, was a world away from the stereotype of the femme fatale often portrayed in later art. She was a woman of immense charm, intellect, and education. She spoke to Caesar in his native language, a gesture that must have deeply impressed him. She presented her case with logic and passion, detailing the injustices she had suffered at the hands of her brother's advisors. Caesar, a man known for his own strategic brilliance, was captivated. He saw in her not just a queen in distress, but a powerful ally who could secure the loyalty of Egypt with its vast resources of grain and wealth for Rome. This meeting ignited what would become a year-long conflict known as the Alexandrian War. Caesar, now allied with Cleopatra, found himself besieged within the palace by the forces loyal to Ptolemy XIII. The fighting was fierce, and at one point, it is said that the famed Library of Alexandria caught fire, a tragic and irreparable loss to human knowledge, although the extent of the damage is still debated by historians. The conflict ended with the defeat and death of Ptolemy XIII, and Cleopatra was restored to her throne, now as co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. She had not only survived a coup, but had returned to power with the backing of the most powerful man in the Roman world. As we settle into a deeper rest, let us visualize this pivotal moment. A young queen, against all odds, reclaiming her destiny by outwitting her rivals and charming the most formidable general of her age. With her throne secure and her primary rival vanquished, Cleopatra's story takes a fascinating turn. She travels with Julius Caesar to Rome in 46 BC, a move that was as bold as it was politically astute. Imagine the scene: a magnificent royal barge, adorned with Egyptian symbols and carrying the last pharaoh, sailing up the Tiber River to the heart of the Roman Republic. Cleopatra's presence in Rome was a sensation. She resided in Caesar's private villa across the Tiber, a place of privilege and status. This was not a humble visit. She came as a queen, an honored ally, not as a subjugated ruler. Her presence sent shockwaves through the conservative Roman elite. During her time in Rome, she gave birth to a son whom she named Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Cleopatra claimed that the boy was Julius Caesar's son, a claim that Caesar himself, though he never publicly acknowledged the boy, did not deny. Caesarion's birth solidified the personal and political bond between the two leaders. For Cleopatra, having Caesar's heir was an insurance policy, a powerful symbol of her connection to Rome's most dominant figure. For Caesar, the alliance with Egypt secured a crucial source of wealth and grain, solidifying his control over the Mediterranean. Cleopatra's sojourn in Rome was a time of immense cultural exchange. She brought with her Egyptian scholars, astronomers, and artists, influencing Roman fashion and religious practices. The Romans were fascinated by the ancient traditions of Egypt. The cult of the goddess Isis, for example, gained immense popularity in Rome, and Egyptian architectural motifs began to appear in Roman villas and temples. This period highlights Cleopatra's role not just as a political figure, but as a cultural ambassador, bridging the gap between two of the ancient world's greatest civilizations. However, this golden period was not to last. The Roman Senate, a body of aristocratic senators deeply concerned about Caesar's growing power and his monarchical tendencies, watched these developments with alarm. On the Ides of March 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated by a conspiracy of senators led by Brutus and Cassius. The murder of Caesar was a world-changing event that plunged the Roman Republic back into civil war and left Cleopatra's position precarious once more. The great protector of her kingdom was gone. Her dreams of a powerful Romano-Egyptian dynasty were shattered. With her son, Caesarion, in tow, she quickly returned to Alexandria, navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics from a distance. The death of Caesar marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, forcing Cleopatra to once again find a way to preserve her kingdom's independence amid the shifting sands of power. As the Roman world descended into chaos following the assassination of Caesar, a new power structure emerged. The conspirators were defeated, and the Roman Republic was carved into spheres of influence by three men: Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir; Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, a loyal supporter; and Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general and a charismatic leader in his own right. This three-man rule, known as the Second Triumvirate, was an uneasy alliance, and it set the stage for the final act of Cleopatra's reign. With the eastern Roman provinces now under his control, Mark Antony, a powerful and ambitious man, summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in 41 BC. He wanted to question her about her loyalty during the recent civil wars, but more importantly, he needed Egypt's wealth to fund his military campaigns against the Parthian Empire. Cleopatra's arrival in Tarsus was a masterclass in theatrical diplomacy. She did not come as a supplicant, but as a goddess. She arrived on a magnificent barge with a gilded prow and purple sails, dressed in the guise of the goddess Aphrodite. The air was filled with the scent of perfumes and the sound of flutes. Antony, waiting for her on the shore, was completely captivated. This display, a deliberate echo of her meeting with Caesar, was a bold statement of her power and independence. This meeting marked the beginning of a profound political and personal relationship that would last for over a decade. Antony was a man of action, a brilliant general, but he was also deeply drawn to the sophisticated culture and luxury of the East. Cleopatra, with her sharp intellect, charm, and knowledge of the region, offered him not just a treasury, but a vision of a new Hellenistic empire ruled from Alexandria. For Cleopatra, Antony was a powerful ally who could protect her kingdom and, perhaps, help her realize her own grand ambitions. Over the next few years, Antony spent increasing amounts of time in Alexandria, becoming a celebrated figure in the Ptolemaic court. He and Cleopatra had 3 children together, twins named Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and a younger son named Ptolemy Philadelphus. These children were a powerful symbol of their union, a potential new dynasty that could one day rule a vast Eastern empire. Antony publicly acknowledged his children with Cleopatra, a move that would later be used against him by his Roman rivals. While their relationship flourished, the tenuous alliance of the Second Triumvirate began to unravel. The ambitious Octavian, back in Rome, began to consolidate his power and turn public opinion against Antony. He painted a picture of Antony as a weak, Easternized Roman, seduced by an exotic queen who sought to dominate the Roman world. He accused Antony of betraying Roman values and of ceding Roman territory to Cleopatra and her children. This propaganda campaign was highly effective, and it set the stage for the final, bloody confrontation that would decide the fate of Rome and Egypt. The political landscape of the Roman world was now a powder keg, and Cleopatra and Antony were at the very center of the escalating conflict. Octavian, ever the master of propaganda, skillfully portrayed Antony's relationship with Cleopatra as a threat to Roman identity and stability. He read Antony's will to the Senate, which allegedly contained provisions for Antony to be buried in Alexandria and for Roman lands to be distributed among Cleopatra's children. While the authenticity of this document is debated by historians, its effect was devastating. Octavian succeeded in convincing the Roman people that Antony was no longer a Roman at heart, but a foreign king under the spell of an exotic queen. The war was officially declared not against Antony, but against Cleopatra, positioning her as the primary aggressor and enemy of the state. Cleopatra and Antony, for their part, had been preparing for this conflict for years. They had amassed a formidable combined force. Antony commanded a huge army of Roman legions, and Cleopatra contributed a powerful navy, as well as the immense wealth of Egypt's treasury. Their headquarters were established in Ephesus, and later in Patras, as they moved their forces closer to Greece in preparation for a decisive confrontation. The scale of the preparations was immense, with both sides mobilizing everything they had for a conflict that would determine the fate of the Mediterranean. The final confrontation would take place at sea. On September 2nd, 31 BC, the 2 fleets met off the coast of western Greece at a place called Actium. Antony and Cleopatra commanded a fleet of around 500 ships, including Cleopatra's large, heavily armed vessels. Octavian's fleet, under the command of his brilliant general Agrippa, was smaller but faster and more maneuverable. The battle was a tense affair, with the 2 fleets locked in a standoff for much of the day. The Battle of Actium remains one of the most debated and dramatic moments in ancient history. At a pivotal moment, Cleopatra's squadron of ships unexpectedly broke away from the main fleet and sailed south, heading toward Egypt. Antony, seeing her departure, followed her, abandoning his command in the middle of the battle. The reason for this sudden retreat is still a source of historical debate. Was it a planned maneuver that went wrong, or was it a moment of panic? Whatever the reason, Antony's desertion demoralized his remaining fleet and land forces, who were soon defeated by Octavian. The Battle of Actium was a complete disaster for Cleopatra and Antony. It was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological one. Antony had lost the loyalty of his troops, and his reputation was in ruins. The once unbeatable general was now a fugitive, and Cleopatra, the powerful queen, was now a queen in flight. The road to Actium had been a long one, a path paved with ambition, love, and political calculation. Now, it had led to an end that seemed to leave them with nowhere left to turn. Following the catastrophic defeat at Actium, the final chapter of Cleopatra's Egypt begins. Antony and Cleopatra retreat to Alexandria, a city now shrouded in an air of foreboding. They know that Octavian's victory is not a temporary setback, but a decisive blow that will lead to the complete Roman subjugation of their kingdom. The couple attempts to regroup and rebuild their forces, but their efforts are in vain. Antony's legions, demoralized and abandoned, have already defected to Octavian's side. The great unified force they had once commanded is no more. The final year of their lives is marked by a frantic and ultimately futile struggle to salvage what they can. Cleopatra attempts to seek alliances in the east, even contemplating the radical idea of sailing her fleet from the Red Sea into the Indian Ocean to build a new empire far from Roman reach. However, these plans are thwarted. The end is now inevitable. Octavian, ever the meticulous strategist, does not rush. He takes his time, consolidating his power and marching his legions toward Egypt. The Roman war machine moves inexorably, closing in on the final independent kingdom of the Hellenistic world. As Octavian's forces close in on Alexandria in 30 BC, the city is thrown into a state of panic. The final moments of Antony and Cleopatra are shrouded in a mix of historical fact and legendary tragedy. According to the ancient accounts, Antony, receiving a false report that Cleopatra had taken her own life, falls on his own sword. He does not die immediately, but is carried to Cleopatra, where he breathes his last in her arms. This scene, whether entirely true or embellished by later writers, speaks to the dramatic and desperate nature of their end. Cleopatra, now alone, is taken prisoner by Octavian. She is held in the mausoleum, where Antony's body is being kept. Octavian's intent is clear. He plans to take her back to Rome and parade her through the streets in his triumphal procession, a public humiliation for the queen who had dared to challenge him. Cleopatra, a woman of immense pride, cannot bear the thought of this ultimate degradation. She understands that her life and the life of her kingdom is over. Her death, like her life, is a subject of endless fascination. The most widely accepted account is that she committed suicide by allowing a venomous snake, perhaps an asp, to bite her. She is said to have chosen this method to avoid the disgrace of a public execution and to die with a royal dignity befitting a pharaoh. As we reflect on this dramatic end, let us pause to consider the weight of her choice. It was the final, defiant act of a queen who, to the very end, refused to surrender her dignity or her will. The city of Alexandria now falls under the shadow of Roman power. With Antony and Cleopatra dead, Octavian enters the city not as a conqueror, but as a deliverer of peace and stability. The final, dramatic moments of the Ptolemaic dynasty are now over, and a new era for Egypt begins. Octavian orders the execution of Cleopatra's eldest son, Caesarion, whom he rightly saw as a potential rival to his claim as Caesar's heir. Cleopatra's children with Antony, however, were spared. Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene were taken to Rome, where they were raised by Octavia, Antony's Roman wife and Octavian's sister. This act of mercy, or perhaps political calculation, was a symbolic gesture that incorporated the remnants of the Ptolemaic line into the Roman world, but stripped them of all power. Octavian, who would soon take the name Augustus and become the first Roman emperor, understood the immense importance of Egypt. He did not integrate it into the Roman Republic as a normal province with a governor appointed by the Senate. Instead, he made it his personal possession, a kind of crown jewel of his new empire. He appointed a prefect or viceroy to rule the land, and crucially, he forbade Roman senators from even visiting Egypt without his express permission. This move was a clear signal of Egypt's strategic value and Octavian's desire to maintain a firm, personal grip on its vast agricultural wealth. Egypt, with its rich Nile delta, became the granary of Rome, feeding the vast city and its expanding legions. The annexation of Egypt was a transformative moment for both societies. For the Egyptians, it meant the end of an era of pharaohs, even Hellenistic ones, and the beginning of a period of direct foreign rule that would last for centuries. The Roman administration, while perhaps more efficient in some ways, was also more rigid and exploitative. They did not seek to blend with Egyptian culture in the way the Ptolemies had, but rather to extract its wealth. For Rome, the conquest of Egypt provided a massive influx of wealth that helped to finance the consolidation of Octavian's power and the establishment of the Roman Empire. The gold, grain, and exotic goods of Egypt flowed into Rome, fueling an age of unprecedented building and prosperity. As we reflect on this pivotal moment, we can see how the fate of one woman, Cleopatra, was inextricably linked to the fate of her kingdom. Her death was not just a personal tragedy, it was the symbolic end of a long line of ancient civilizations and the beginning of a new world order dominated by Rome. The sun had set on the age of the pharaohs, and a new dawn, a Roman one, was breaking over the sands of Egypt. We now arrive at the final chapter of our tranquil journey, reflecting on the enduring legacy of a woman and a kingdom that refused to be forgotten. The story of Cleopatra's Egypt did not end with her death. In many ways, it was just beginning its transformation into myth. Octavian, now the Emperor Augustus, may have sought to erase her from history as a formidable political rival, but his efforts were ultimately in vain. The romance and drama of her life, her relationships with two of the most powerful men in Rome, her struggle to preserve her kingdom's independence, and her defiant death, captured the imagination of poets, playwrights, and artists for centuries to come. Cleopatra's story, as a result, has been interpreted and reinterpreted across time. Roman historians, writing from the perspective of the victors, often portrayed her as a manipulative temptress who used her beauty to beguile great Roman men. This portrayal, while politically motivated, was incredibly influential and formed the basis for many later works, including Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra. In this and other works, she is a tragic heroine, a figure of passion and power who, against all odds, fought for her freedom and her love. This enduring image has been cemented in the public consciousness through countless paintings, films, and novels, making her one of the most recognizable figures of the ancient world. Beyond the dramatic myth, Cleopatra's legacy is also deeply rooted in the historical reality of her time. As the last pharaoh, she represented the final echo of a civilization that had endured for thousands of years. Her rule, and that of the Ptolemaic dynasty, was a unique bridge between the Greek and Egyptian worlds. The cultural synthesis they fostered in Alexandria, a city that was a beacon of intellectual achievement and Hellenistic culture, left an indelible mark on the ancient world. The Great Library of Alexandria, though its fate is debated, symbolizes this golden age of learning that she inherited. This era of Hellenistic scholarship and science laid the groundwork for future generations and influenced thought and discovery for centuries. The annexation of Egypt also had a profound and lasting impact on the Roman Empire itself. Egypt became Rome's economic engine, its grain supplies ensuring the stability of the empire and the feeding of its people. This influx of wealth and resources allowed Rome to expand its power and maintain its vast territories. The artistic and religious influence of Egypt also continued to permeate Roman society, with Egyptian gods and motifs appearing in art and architecture across the empire. The very calendar we use today, the Julian calendar, was a product of the intellectual and astronomical knowledge of the Hellenistic world that Cleopatra's dynasty represented. As our journey comes to a close, let us reflect on the quiet power of history. The story of Cleopatra's Egypt is not just about a queen or a kingdom or a war. It is about the ebb and flow of cultures, the collision of empires, and the enduring human struggle for power, love, and legacy. The echoes of her reign can still be heard in the halls of museums, in the pages of literature, and in the very landscape of our modern world. As you drift off into a deep and peaceful sleep, let the gentle whispers of this ancient world guide you to a tranquil rest. Sweet dreams.